We're good. We're going. Welcome, Femi.
Thank you very much.
How
Great
you
to be
doing?
here. I'm brilliant.
So you were born in Lewisham,
I was.
South London.
South London.
Yeah.
Though I grew up in Nigeria.
Did you have any time in Lewisham?
1 year and a half.
So you don't really remember it?
Well, I went back to London.
Okay.
Then in my 20s and lived southeast London, yeah. So
you're back in South London?
No, I'm no longer in London.
No, you were back in South London.
I was back in London. Then I went to Nigeria and now I'm in Ireland.
You're in Ireland?
Yes.
How the hell did you end up in Ireland?
Long story, too long for the time we have, for sure.
Oh, man. Like, my dad lives in Ireland.
Really? Where?
Yeah, he lives in Donegal.
Okay.
It's up in the north, west.
That's getting close to Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did. We had camped in Donegal in summer.
Yeah?
Yep. I live in Kildare. Kildare. It's.
I mean, if you just said Dublin, I'd be like, yeah, I get it. You've gone for what? How do you end up in the Kildare? How does a Nigerian end up in Kildare?
When you're a man with 3 kids,
yeah,
big city life is not so fun anymore. And I could do London in my 20s, not in my 40s.
But Kildare?
Yeah.
How did you, I have to hear this story. How do you end up in Kildare?
Well, I ended up in Waterford. I needed to be close to Dublin, but not in Dublin.
Okay, yeah.
Because of international travel. It makes no sense. Fly to Ireland and then spend more time within Ireland than you spent on the flight. So
Waterford's south of Dublin, isn't it?
It's southeast.
Southeast.
The sunny southeast.
Yeah.
Well, sunny.
How many Nigerians in Kildare?
You'll be shocked.
Yeah? You got a community?
We're everywhere.
We've got a Nigerian restaurant in Bedford where I'm from.
You'll be shocked. We're everywhere.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Do you like Ireland?
Yes, good.
Yeah? You've not picked up the accent?
I won't.
I think the Irish people are the friendliest people you'll meet.
They can be friendly.
They can be.
They can be friendly. Every society is nuanced.
Yeah, okay.
And every interaction is nuanced.
Give me your Bitcoin story, because Danny said to me you weren't 100% convinced, and you weren't 100% convinced that Bitcoin can really help in Africa. So how did you end up down the rabbit hole?
So I saw Bitcoin very early. But I saw it, I didn't understand it. When I saw Bitcoin, it was $27 to 1. Yeah.
Okay.
Silk Road news, I saw Bitcoin, didn't touch it. Like everybody else, at some point, traded the other coins, lost money. And then early last year, so early 2022, a group of guys reached out to me and said they're setting up this program to train software developers from Africa to become Bitcoin developers. And they needed someone to run it. Could I recommend someone to them? So in my previous life, before Bitcoin, about 14 years ago, I co-founded what is now the largest technology innovation hub in Africa. So we have physical spaces in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Namibia. Co-founded a very close friend. Worked in there for 8 years, supporting startups grow, but also supporting startups to figure out what problems were in society and how they could build products and solutions from them. So left that, went back to school to study education technology, because I'm very passionate about education. So when they reached out, it also came at a time when I was looking for something else to do. And so the request was, help us find someone. But of course, I couldn't nominate someone for what I didn't understand. So I wanted to find out more, what exactly is this whole thing about Bitcoin development and Bitcoin. So did a few internet searches, started reading the Bitcoin standard. I didn't finish it. I got as much as I needed out of it to see it and to see the bigger picture. And it got me intrigued enough to say, okay, you know what? Let me do it for you guys. And we agreed commercials, and that's how we started.
Interesting. So this is my first trip to Africa.
Yep.
So we've had 4 days here in Ghana, off to Malawi and Kenya.
Nice.
I wanted to go to Nigeria.
You should eventually. But I mean, you're starting with the the easy route in, like is the gentle intro.
That's what I was told, but I want the craziness of Lagos.
Nigeria is intense. Lagos is intense. It's good intense, but it's every city is nuanced. Every society, every environment is nuanced. There's chaos in Lagos, but it's organized chaos, if you understand it.
Yeah, well, I want to see it.
Yeah,
we'll get out there. But one of the reasons I want to come out to Africa and see various countries here is because as a Bitcoiner, people say, "Oh, yeah, Bitcoin can really help Africa," and it's like, well, you want to see it for yourself. And I've been to South America, I've been to Asia, I live in Europe, I've been to America, and like the truth is, the things I've seen are the same problems I see everywhere. There is a certain amount of corruption, there's high inflation, there are people struggling to get by, but there's no fundamental difference. There's nuances, like you say, from city to city. There's nuances I've seen.
And is this within Africa and Latin America, or does that also include the US and Europe?
Everything, everywhere.
Or there are big differences?
Well, the nuances. So the problem of high inflation is everywhere. Yes, it's higher maybe here than in Europe and the UK, but people still aren't used to it in the UK and Europe. It's still a squeeze on them. The biggest difference I see here is that, say here in Ghana, is there is no handout from the government if you're struggling. Everyone's got to get out and work and support themselves.
Mm.
But fundamentally, humans, I think, are just facing the same issues everywhere, where they need to wake up and earn a living.
Yeah.
It's just there's less. It feels like here in Ghana, those at the lower end of the economic spectrum, they've got no breathing room. Whereas people maybe in the UK or US are thinking about, how do I get through the next week or month? It's the next day.
Yeah. But yes, at that level, yes. But there are bigger systemic issues, bigger things that are even more complex that you won't see. And they're huge. And they're also part of the reasons why I'm excited about Bitcoin.
So, okay, the biggest systemic issue, is it the more deep-rooted corruption?
No.
All right, tell me.
The bigger, deeper issue is that the global system is designed so that we will never emerge.
Yeah.
Because you're trapped by debt.
No, debt is one part.
Is this economic imperialism that Alex Gladstein talks about?
That speaks to some of it. I'll give you an example. If this conference happened 8 years ago, if you came here and you had to buy something at home and you opened your PayPal account, once PayPal reads your IP as Ghana, they will have frozen your account. And you will not be able to retrieve it until you get back home.
Why is that?
Fraud. We want to prevent fraud.
What's the real reason?
Yes, that may be the reason, but I don't think the solution is the right solution. To give you context, if you go to Nigeria now, I don't know any other country in the world that has it. A Nigerian PayPal account is send only.
It's send only?
Correct.
For PayPal?
Yes.
How do you put the money into send?
Good. No, I can deposit money from my card into my PayPal account.
And send it to me.
But you can send me PayPal.
Is this capital controls? A bit like how they don't really, in Nigeria, they didn't really want people using the dollar. Wasn't there a restriction put there?
It was this preceded capital controls.
Okay.
This is PayPal's internal decision. Yes, they get bounced, they get fraud alerts and all, but the elegant systems of fixing that, rather than locking out 200 million people from global commerce through what then used to be the biggest channel. Of course, it sparked fintechs to rise in Africa to say, hey, we'll create systems that people can use to pay from outside. But that's the kind of decision that a global company like PayPal can make on the biggest economy in Africa. And it has impact, and people don't see it. Because the guy in Nigeria that is doing work, now remote work is very available, but he's doing that work. Can he get the value he's earned from that work back? And when all the systems, the channels that are set up for it are either going to collect a margin on every bit of his work because that system has just been designed in that way. Then there's a problem somewhere. I'll give you another example. Western Union, MoneyGram. Last year, the US government requested that they send information on every transaction in the US from their platforms for people in this part of the world. Every single one, line by line. Already those systems, when you see the statistics of remittance that's coming to Africa from the diaspora, that means those companies are already getting a huge cut.
What do they take? 7%, 10%?
Varies here and there. They take a huge cut from it. So I'm not talking yet about what's happening locally. And there are issues locally. But I think our biggest challenge from a money standpoint usually comes when our money has to touch the rest of the world. Inside Nigeria, we have one of the most fantastic electronic systems for settling payment. If I sent you money in Ireland now from my Irish account, if I sent something to your dad to his Irish account, he's not getting it until after 10 a.m. tomorrow morning when the bank's open. If I send it in Nigeria now, even if we're two separate banks, two different banks, you get it instant.
Yeah, it's the same as we have in the UK.
Right?
Yeah.
Same in the UK, but there are places in Europe where you don't have it that fast.
Mm-hmm.
So means of electronic transfer locally is starting to get easier. The problem starts when you're a businessman and you want to pay a supplier abroad, or you're a Nigerian developer who's working for a global company in Nigeria and you want to get your salaries back home.
Is this a problem if you try and do business with other African nations or just with the US and Europe?
That one's a crap show on its own.
But do you feel like this is the developed world?
Again, the system is designed so that we don't do business with each other.
So when you say it's designed that way, you say PayPal can make this decision, but you're also implying there's something more nefarious going on.
Yes.
So what is that?
So our continent, from its first interactions with the West, has always been a place to come extract resources from. And it's easy for you to extract resources when the guys that are on ground do not understand the value of the resources that they have. And now we're talking mines, like natural resources. But I'm talking human beings back in the days to go work on plantations in the West. I'm talking ivory. I'm talking gold. This is centuries-long system. And so it's in the best interest of the West to maintain its competitive advantage, to still be able to get some things fundamentally cheap. For that to happen, Africa cannot work. Because if Africa works, then the Africans are going to come to that conversation negotiating in a different way.
Because they'll raise their prices.
They'll actually add value to the things that they have, natural resources. And so you don't have that natural resources. We don't want to be the guys that are selling the natural resources. We want to process, add value to it. You buy cocoa beans in Nigeria or in Ghana, which is one of the biggest producers of cocoa in the world. Send it to Belgium or Switzerland. They create amazing chocolate. It comes back here with a huge markup. What stops the guys here from, they have the core product for chocolate is cocoa. What stops us from having the best chocolatiers in the world here in Ghana? But if Ghana works and they do that, then Switzerland is scared. Then Belgium is scared. And so the system is designed to make us stay where we are. And the tools for that are, and Alex talked about that effectively, the World Bank and the IMF. Because in the 80s, when we knew we had corrupt leaders and they knew these guys were corrupt,
they propped them up.
They loaned us money. They loaned us money, clearly aware that the guy they're loaning money to is going to take a chunk of that money back to his account in Austria, in Switzerland, in London, in Germany, in the US. But we still have the debt as a nation. And part of the conditions of that debt is that before our governments can make decisions on simple policy, they have to run it by the guys they loan money to. And the guys they loan money to will never agree to policies that will weaken their principal shareholders, which is the US, the UK, Japan, countries of the West.
So we're just loan sharks. That's what we call it in the UK. Do you know that
I know
loan
them,
shark?
the payday loan guys.
Yeah, payday loan guys. But there's even worse. It's the guys that come and knock on the door and they give you a loan, and the interest rate, you can never pay it off.
Now here's the interesting thing about, so the loans are one part, and then when they take those loans, part of the conditions is we're going to make it easy for companies from your countries to get access to our resources. Because the government has to support business. So business comes in and gets access. And then you have to, make yourself feel like the good guys. And so they say, and we're giving aid to the Africans. So the system you have created already is what is impoverishing the Africans. And then you say you want to make yourself look good by giving aid to the Africans. But here's even what's interesting and worse about that. A huge percentage of the aid that comes to Africa never leaves the West.
What?
Never leaves.
Why?
Yeah.
So the UK government decides they're going to give 4 billion to a project in Africa. Somebody is going to administer or design the project. Most likely going to be an organization in the UK, a consultant in the UK, or a government agency in the UK. They're going to fly their staff to Nigeria where the project is happening. They're going to fly British Airways. They're going to stay in a hotel chain, 5-star hotel, most probably owned by a group with their headquarters in the UK. They're going to get big cars for the ground staff. Most likely
German.
Something from the West. And then by the time you look at all the cost, what actually gets to the actual project is tiny, because the cost for the flight, the cost for the hotel, the cost for the cars, the cost for the staff, everything is taken from that so-called money that they have given.
So, I mean, that wouldn't add up to the whole 4 billion, but I get the idea. I get the idea
the point is that
the companies, what you need here in, say, Ghana, is you need the big successful companies owned by Ghanaians.
No.
No?
No. I'll come to that. For the aid story, and there's a book you can read, it's called Dead Aid, by a lady called Ambi Samoyo. The story is that what is seen as international aid is actually stimulus to British businesses who are working in Africa around an issue that will never be solved because the systemic reasons for those issues, the UK is a part of. And I'm not exonerating our governments. I'm not in any way. But I've seen attempts of people trying to get into governments to fix the system. And we have history. History is littered with times when the West has intervened. And the final, last resort is they get the person assassinated. In some instances, they'll find a local prop to do it. So they make it seem as if it was you guys who assassinated one of yours. And you will always find them. Now, the point about Ghanaian companies being owned by Ghanaians, that for me is not the issue.
Just before we do that,
yes.
If the debt is what's trapping these countries, what stops them from just defaulting on it?
They have citizens. I mean, the easiest example of what happens, go look at Zimbabwe.
What happened there?
Zimbabwe, colonized by the British, was liberated after a brutal war in the 80s. And Mugabe was one of the guys who led that. Initially, he was a good guy. But one of the things that they didn't decouple at the point of independence was land ownership in the country. So you had all these British colonial settlers who came to Zimbabwe and who lived there, built ranches, and the things they got during colonial times transferred, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at one point he said, you know what, it makes no sense that in our country, majority of the land is owned by the colonialists and we say we're independent. So we are going to get the land back. And then the West did the big squeeze, locked them out from trade. But also, if you know about the dollar standard, which came right after World War II with Bretton Woods institutions, where every country has a portion of their reserves in the US dollars. It means that the US government can basically literally hold on to your savings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you default on debt, you still need funds to run the society. And we're not all the US. What the US government does is they print more because they are at the source. We don't have access to the source. So suddenly we default and then they hold on to your funds and then your people are hungry. A guy was joking yesterday here that I'm from the country where at one point everyone was a billionaire. Because inflation went so crazy in Zimbabwe that their currency became literally worthless.
Is that because they had no access to dollar reserves and
they had access? They were squeezed from every angle. They couldn't trade, all kinds of sanctions. Their reserves were held.
How much blame can be pointed to Mugabe as well? Was he corrupt?
Yes. He tasted power. He loved power. He wasn't going to let go of power. But the story is never always complete.
Yeah.
And the story is never always complete because the story that the bulk of the world hears comes from filtered source. CNN, BBC. They're not neutral news organizations by a long stretch. And they influence the dominant narrative about any subject. The example I always give for this is if you look at what happened with the Arab world on 9/11, the image and perception of the world about an Arab changed when those two planes went into that building. Suddenly, Arabs became categorized as terrorists. Part of the response from the sheikhs in the Arab world was that they launched Al Jazeera because they realized we need our own media outlets to counter the narrative about the Arab world and to show that for every story, the CNN, the BBC side is not the only side. There's also this side. We don't have that. Mugabe didn't have anyone to tell his story. Well, he tried to tell his story. And Mugabe is not perfect. Mugabe did really nasty things. But the story about Zimbabwe got high inflation because Mugabe was a bad guy is incomplete. Because it doesn't talk about the big squeeze. The rest of the world can isolate a country. You produce stuff you can't export. You have savings you can't touch, but you need to run society.
Why are people in Africa not more hostile to us coming over? Everyone's been so friendly and nice.
A few things. One is you've made it impossible for us to unite to do what we need to do to get out. The countries we have in Africa are arbitrary. Majority of the division of Africa into countries was done in Berlin about 110 years ago, a period of 5 years. And what it is if the logic of it made no sense. So it fragmented us, and the West have been great at using that fragment.
Sorry, 110 years ago,
yes,
Africa was split in separate countries. What was before? I mean, I feel really uneducated here.
No, I am too.
Yeah, I had no idea.
We were a large landmass of a number of tribes.
Okay.
Right? But we didn't have carved borders.
Mm-hmm.
Carved borders were institutionalized in the Berlin Conference. a series of conferences where a few European powers came together to divide different tracts to say who owns what. And here's the way I when I look at the map now, here's the way I think some of the decisions were made. On the west coast of West Africa, where we are now, from this point to this point on the border, all the way up to the Sahara Desert, Britain is yours. From this point to this point on the coast, all the way up to Sahara Desert, France, it's yours. This point to this point, all the way up, Germany, it's yours. What those maps then did was that they broke entire tribes into multiple countries. So if you look at the northern region of West Africa, the north of the countries of West Africa, like Ghana, like Togo, like Benin, like Nigeria, and on the other side, like Ivory Coast and co. There's one tribe that cuts across all those countries. They're called the Hausa Fulani. So the guys in the north of Nigeria and the south of Niger, which is above us, are Hausa Fulani. They speak the same language, have the same history, have the same ancestors. But now they're in different countries. They feel more allegiance to the tribe than to the country. How do you come together and collaborate and push out an invader if you guys can't even sit together at a table to talk? And the West have also been brilliant. Every time we try to aggregate, to have a common voice, it's very easy for them to find one dissenter or two dissenters from the fragment and get them to scatter the whole cat. A few years ago, our government, strangely, next to impossible, somehow it happened. We signed a deal for a free trade agreement across Africa. Of course, now the conversation is now around how do we even operationalize it. But the fact that it even happened was a miracle. Because ordinarily, anything like that would strengthen us. Again, a lot of this is because of the debts that our government entered in the 80s and the 90s. The guys that we owe money to, World Bank, IMF, most times will send a technical advisor to your minister in government or to your president in government, who is basically making sure that the policy and the policy agenda favors their own long-term interests at the detriment of our own people. And so when we circle it back to Bitcoin, and this is what excited me.
Yeah.
I saw finally an opportunity for us to change the conversation and have a stake on the game.
Because it's a financial system you can't be locked out of.
Because it is money that can't be controlled by a sovereign external power. Because money is no longer just a currency. It's a political tool. It's a weapon of influence. And we're usually at the short end of the straw.
It feels shit.
Mm-hmm.
It feels crap.
It is crap.
But it feels crap as someone from the UK
who benefits from that system.
Yeah, look, there's two things there. Firstly, there's like this historical past that predates me, the colonial past, which is always crap. You know, you go to countries
there's some of the current crap too.
Well, but just saying,
my worst day as a citizen, as someone who lived in the UK, was Red Nose Day. You know Red Nose Day?
Yeah, of course, Lenny Henry.
For me, it's the worst thing in the world.
Why?
African poverty porn for a whole day streamed live on pushing that narrative of they are poor, they are black people, they need our help, send them $1 or $2. When your basic
raping the country
privileges are the things that's keeping them like that.
Yeah.
And what that does, the other side of it, which we're not thinking about, is what that does to our psychology and our mindset as Africans.
Are people here in Africa aware of Red Nose Day, or are you just aware because you've come over to live in the UK and Ireland?
Here, people don't know.
They don't know. Do you think, like, the part of me wants to say, like, it's still a good thing. Money's being raised, it's being helpful, it's going towards projects. But, like, then the conspiracy person inside me says, is this a tool our government used to distract us from the fact that we're just still raping the continent?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's, let me take care of any feelings of guilt I may want to have about the systemic injustice that's still keeping my country rich, by saying, at least I supported a child through school in Africa. That's not what moves the needle.
And I was going to say, in the end, the numbers I don't know what they are these days. Usually a couple of tens of millions, right? They raise.
I mean, I've not seen it.
They put the
more money comes into Africa from the African diaspora than from international aid combined.
But just circling back, it feels shit. Well, firstly, I never knew all this. I knew all the historical colonial past, not just Africa, India, I know all of that. And I always kind of thought, well, that predates me. What can I do? I wasn't alive then. But the stuff and work that Alex Gladstein has done, exposing this new economic imperialism that's come from the World Bank and the IMF, I know I'm benefiting from it. But there's no way I know it. I don't know how I can extricate myself from it. I can't
buy Bitcoin. No,
what I'm saying is just by living, existing, and buying and having access to products in the UK, I don't know if and when I'm always taking advantage, and I can't stop myself because I live in the UK. I'm part of the UK system, but it feels crap. So what needs to be done? I mean, there's just so many things.
So for years, a lot of the cries from Africa has been trade, not aid.
Mm-hmm.
Trade, not aid. Give us access to be able to get our products to global markets for free, or at least with sense. The cost of travel, the cost of getting goods out, the taxes and tariffs that governments put in place make it impossible and hard for even someone that just wants to do legitimate trade.
So we come in and we take your stuff cheap, and then we just hold you down. We hold people down in Africa from doing the same in return, just selling their products.
And the stuff you want to take is the raw, unprocessed stuff.
Yeah. So we can make our stuff to sell it back to you.
Correct. And if we process stuff and we want to sell it to you, you've put all kinds of barriers that make it not competitive for us to sell it to you. Because you prefer that we are at the first part of the value chain.
But by keeping the things that we extract from places like Africa, we keep our inflation lower in our countries.
Correct.
So we export our inflation around the world.
So you keep inflation low, but you reduce your cost of production because your raw materials are cheap. And you say, oh, it's past, but we're still stuck in some of those past arrangements.
Oh no, I'm saying the colonial.
No, I'm saying it's very easy to put that perspective of this colonialism was a long time ago.
Well, that's the realization.
But we're still stuck in some of the systems that were put in place due to the stuff that happened a long time ago. And the media makes sure that the brainwashing and narrative forming continues unabated. So we've not had the opportunity to expose and show the counter narrative at scale.
So a minute ago, I kind of flippantly said buy Bitcoin to meaning if you remove your money from that system, you don't help prop it up. But is that a naive view that can actually make a change?
So I think, and I had this in one of my presentations at the conference. I think Bitcoin is going through an identity crisis. And it doesn't realize it because the dominant voices in Bitcoin are on the side of the argument for Bitcoin or the identity of Bitcoin that does not necessarily track for the rest of the world.
Tell me that, because that's really interesting. Let me tell you the last tweet I just put out. You can learn so much about Bitcoin by traveling. I feel like this is an interesting thing you raise
Yeah.
it, because I feel like I see the world of Bitcoin on Twitter, and then I see the world of Bitcoin when we go and travel, and I feel like we are seeing a completely different world in terms of what the needs of people. Like you always hear Bitcoin fixes this, yeah, okay, what? And I feel like we are seeing a completely different world, and there's this gulf between us. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes.
I know what you mean,
Yeah. And
So-
like I cannot get this through to people.
So when Satoshi released Bitcoin, the ideas of Bitcoin are amazing. And problems that Bitcoin and the features of Bitcoin are amazing. The problem is that for most societies in the West, some of the fundamental problems that Bitcoin fixes are not really your lived reality. And that's why I said, no, problems are not the same.
Well, so one of the things I've been wrestling with since I've been here.
Yeah.
You know, I said to you, the problems I see with Bitcoin the problems I see when I travel from country to country are generally the same. The thing that keeps standing out to me is that it feels like Bitcoin is a tool for the middle class. And at the moment, it's the middle class. The rich people don't think they need it because they're so rich, and the poor can't get access to it or don't have the disposable income. It's the middle class who use it.
And so what I'm saying is that view is shaped by that identity of Bitcoin. And I'll talk about that identity. So there's Bitcoin, the store of value, which is an investment asset. You buy, you stack sat, you hodl. And there's Bitcoin, the medium of exchange. That is censorship resistant, that helps you move value globally without relying on the existing traditional systems. For people in the West, they don't have a problem of moving money across global systems and censorship. So for them, because of their lived reality, medium of exchange is a theoretical, abstract thing. And so they have latched on to Bitcoin as a store of value. Convert your dollars to Bitcoin. Stack sats, hodl to the moon. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the philosophers and thought leaders in Bitcoin tell stories of Bitcoin just from that perspective of store of value. It's also the reason why 80% plus of products in Bitcoin, application products in Bitcoin, are either products that help you convert your fiat to Bitcoin, exchanges, or products that help you keep your Bitcoin wallets. Exchange wallet. I don't know how many more kind of multi-sig wallets we can have. It's because the fundamental problems around exchange of value that Bitcoin addresses is out of the realm of reality of people in the West who are, in most cases, the forerunners and thought leaders in Bitcoin. In our part of the world, censorship is not an abstract concept. Difficulty in sending money to China or to Australia or to the UK is not an abstract concept. It's stuff we go through every day. A Nigerian student has just gotten admitted to a university in the UK, needs to send fees to the school to hold their accommodation, their admission. Can't get money to the UK because the systems have been created. And when they do, the fees are high because every intermediary in the process gets a cut. It's not abstract to them. The activist that's being chased by the government because of the corruption that they exposed, they've frozen her bank account. She needs to get money to her field staff. Or in the dire instance, she needs to sell off everything she has and she needs to flee across the border. For her, that power of censorship-resistant money is not theoretical or abstract. It's her reality. What applications are we building in Bitcoin that speak to that use case? And that use case is not a one person's isolated use case. So because we have this reinforcing loop of conversations around Bitcoin, the store of value, which is what that whole Twitter circle is. And it's the same people who don't have this lived reality. And what I try and challenge Africans about is, look, the reality in the West is not our reality. And the way we see Bitcoin should not be the way the Westerners see Bitcoin. If we do, then we forget what exactly is the essence of this thing and how it solves real problems that we have. What excites me and the reason why I do Bitcoin, the reason why I took that job was that I thought this is an opportunity for us to engage with this new technology as builders rather than consumers. It's an opportunity for us, and we've seen it in every wave of technology. The automobile. We import every kind of car. What car companies do you know? What car brands do you know that are African?
None.
There are some.
Are there? Yeah.
There are some, but they're even struggling to sell locally, talk less of importing to the rest of the world. So when people think Bitcoin, we need to be clear, what Bitcoin are we talking about? And I'm not saying store of value is not an important property of Bitcoin, but limiting perspective and limiting conversation on Bitcoin to that store of value feature diminishes the potential of the technology. It's like saying all you can do with your cash is buy stocks.
But so what do you need here? Because one answer is to say, okay, we can get this podcast out, we can go and talk to people, we can encourage people to invest and create products here. Or is it the better scenario is that the Bitcoiners that exist in Africa, should they be the ones who are building the products here?
Both. And build a few things. One, and it's what I've challenged and I keep challenging the African Bitcoin community. We need to tell our stories. We need to share our narratives, because if we don't, then dominant narrative will dominate. And we need to use empirical data. We need to show examples. We need to explain these things that you're saying you're only hearing for the first time. Because they're not in the dominant narrative. The BBC has no incentive to publish or promote that the UK is screwing the world. They have no incentive. It's not their mandate. Even though they're supposed to be neutral media. So we have to tell those stories, write the books, run the podcast, show what is happening here. That's one piece. Two, and it's what for me is also important, again, about the work I do. We need to get our people understanding the technology enough that they can actually build applications on it that solve our own use cases, but also show the rest of the Bitcoin world what the use cases of Bitcoin is, the real use cases of Bitcoin beyond store of value. And then three, I think the rest of the Bitcoin world needs to be humble and be open to learn. It's sometimes we don't know that we do it, but we do it. There's always this feeling, again, why I hate Red Nose Day. Let's go help the Africans. And sometimes it's let's go teach the Africans. When sometimes just shut up and listen and hear and understand that what you think is reality may not be. It's a matrix. What you think, the dominant narrative you've had for your whole life, with all the elements that you didn't think were important, but that were part of shaping you, may all have been part of the simulation. And it's also why I tell my people to, you also need to engage with people from the West, not assuming that they know more than you. They may have been in Bitcoin longer than you. Doesn't mean they know more than you. I've been in Bitcoin barely 2 years. But I have perspective, which is the other thing. I find there are lots of people in Bitcoin for whom the entire world is Bitcoin. And they don't have context for the rest of the world. And that rest of the world context is important.
Yep.
kind of thing you're doing, or you guys are doing, Bedford is where you have the FC, right?
Yeah, the football team.
Seen the video, I've been thinking that one day I should come.
You should come. You should come in April.
I probably should. I need to make sure I don't overbook myself next year.
April 12th, 13th, we've got our conference. We can make a slot for you.
Happy to come. But that is taking Bitcoin away from stack sats, bringing it into a real life scenario of things that are important to people. What you're trying to do to revive the town center, adding football, which is very important to people. See, the way I see it,
I knew a Nigerian would get it.
the way what scales Bitcoin is not education and educate everybody. It's utility.
Yeah.
A man wakes up in the morning, goes throughout his whole day till night. At different touch points, he has to interact with money. Getting his coffee, paying for his Uber, buying a gift for his wife, his newspapers. Every single touch point should be an opportunity for him to spend Bitcoin as money. But what that means, and I believe you'll be less concerned about volatility if you earned your Bitcoin rather than buy it. Because volatility is the price of Bitcoin versus the US dollars. Well, you're only looking at it US dollars because you bought it for US dollars. But if you deliver the service with the skills that you already have and you get paid in sats, and you speak to someone else and the person delivers a service to you and you pay that person in sats, you're less concerned about what was the value of sats when I got it, what's it now? But for that to happen, real world applications that solve people's lives need to have the option for people to spend sats. And so rather than building another exchange and another wallet, how do we build a way for Uber to integrate with Bitcoin seamlessly? Some people are building it, but not enough. How do we then look at other areas where there are problems and say, how do we build solutions for that and integrate the many interesting features of Bitcoin, time locks, multi-sig, integrate all those things in creating experiences that fit what people want, gives them value, helps them improve their quality of life, and helps Bitcoin grow.
So how do we help? And I know you're saying also it's just helping the Africans, but we'll travel anywhere. It's not just Africa, South America, Asia. We'll go anywhere and cover Bitcoin and help and promote ideas and projects. We've been in South America. It's the first time in Africa. We're doing 3 countries. We can still help. Like, what can we do? This is a large platform. A lot of people listen to it.
So here's one that I think is crucial. And it came up in one of the conversations yesterday. I think your Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ecosystem gets stronger when you have applications built on Bitcoin. But to build applications and real world company, you need resources.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than keeping your Bitcoin in cold storage somewhere, we need tons of Bitcoin angel investors. Because your one BTC that you've stacked, or half a BTC or quarter of a BTC, goes a much longer way here than where you are in helping someone experiment an idea of an application of Bitcoin that's integrated into people's lives that can potentially become a big business. So I don't want people keeping, what's the point of having 176,000 BTC stored somewhere waiting for the price to go to the moon? When if you take a tiny fraction of that and use that to seed tons of application companies across the global south. Because what I'm saying, there's dimensions of it in Latin America, there's dimensions of it in Asia. Seed these companies with tiny portions of that Bitcoin. If we're building money, we shouldn't be struggling to find money to build the solutions that show the potential of that money.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than stack all that sats and keep somewhere, it's useless there. It's not adding value to Bitcoin there. Take that sats and invest in companies. It's trade. Those companies make money, you make it big. Of course, we know it's a law of average with investing in companies. Some will make it, some won't. But you won't get anyone to make it if we're not investing in them. So if there's one thing, and when you do, make sure you're coming to the engagement to learn, not to impose your own worldview about Bitcoin on the people, but to listen to them to understand the nuance, the context of their environment, so that we can all learn together how we can actually use Bitcoin to address it, because they know dimensions of their challenge that you can't. The guys in South Africa, Machankura, built a USSD application for Bitcoin. That means you can buy, sell Bitcoin without even having access to the internet. The designers, developers in New York, it's out of their realm of reality that there are people on this planet that have mobile phones and no internet. They don't even know what USSD protocol is, which was used to build the solution. It's the guys who live in the midst of that problem that understand enough context and have enough context to build nuanced products, also taking into consideration how the people in their countries consume technology. We're going to need resources for it. And I think it's smart resources, smart use of and smart deployment of capital for people who are interested in growing this space.
So is this the work you're doing with Btrust?
So my work with Btrust is around getting existing software developers in Africa to even understand first that there's even something called Bitcoin development. Then to get them to actually know how to build the skills and the portfolio. At the moment with Btrust, get them to then contribute to open source Bitcoin projects. Because that's again another place where our voice is not being heard. And decisions are being made at protocol level, at Bitcoin Core, at Lightning protocol level that affect us without us being in the conversation. And decisions are being made that are not taking into consideration the nuances of our environment when it comes to technology and technology access and all. And so what we're doing at Btrust is trying to see how we can get in that room, get in those rooms, get in there contributing, get in there speaking, get in there sharing, but knowing enough about this technology that we can then build these scalable companies that build these applications that address it. So we're training developers, we're connecting them to open source, but we're building, more importantly, a critical mass of Africans that can engage with this technology as producers, not as consumers.
This is an eye-opening interview. I have struggled since I've been here. Danny knows, I've been questioning, what are we doing with Bitcoin? What is it who are we trying to help here? And it's just been a really important trip for that and this interview too. And we are here to help, Femi. In the future, you should come to our thing in April if you can. And
I'll try to. It's a short hop.
And we will come back here and we will try and help and we will try and come and listen and understand what the local issues are and then try and influence people who are maybe not aware of anything behind outside of their worldview, that there are different requirements in different parts of the world. So we will do that. But I appreciate you coming on. And
I think something else that I just thought of, our storytellers may also need your help.
Yeah, well, that's not a problem.
And your collaboration.
Not a problem at all. If you've got anyone you think who should come on, just let us know.
Yeah.
And we'll do it.
I mean, one part is them coming on, but I'd love to see our people set up podcasts too.
Well, we can. That's an easy one.
Easy.
And get support in what they should think of, how they frame the entire process. Because I know it's a complex process.
It's not that. And we share that with everyone anyway. So anytime, give us a shout. Okay. If people want to follow you, where do they find you?
Twitter is the best place to find me. And it's at Femi Longe. That's at
You're going to have to spell that.
FEMILONGE.
Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to do this again.
Absolutely.
Maybe in Kildare.
Absolutely.
Femi, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.